Hi everybody, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface on the live servers for Warlords of Draneor with a brand new segment called Raid Progression. In this segment that I'm going to bring you, I'm going to be discussing my own personal raid progression, how raiding is going for our guild, and also allowing the opportunity to bring some people into the video to discuss the raiding element of Warlords of Draneor. Very interesting stuff. Now, one of the reasons why I changed faction to go from Alliance to Horde to Raid seems to have confused a few people. So again, I want to just make sure that we're on the same page here as to why, because I can understand that people enjoyed me being Alliance, especially if they were Alliance, because they have some sort of affinity with you. They can relate to you, and they're sort of like, yay! Now, the reason why I changed, because people are just like, why can't you just get an Alliance guild? And this is what they didn't seem to understand. The reason was, it wasn't just that I got any old guild to raid with, and that's why I changed faction. The reason was, I got the guild I wanted to raid with, and they were on the Horde faction. So it was all to do with the people in this guild, not the faction. Nothing to do with the faction whatsoever. If these guys are on the Alliance side, I'd still be Alliance. It's as simple as that. But some people are taking it a little bit personally, you know, and I don't want to take the piss out of them too much, no. But some people are taking it a wee bit too personally, as if it was just, you know, go out and just get an Alliance guild and raid. It wasn't about the faction people, it was about the people in the guild that I wanted to raid with. These are the guys who I did the Funtime Frank stuff with, and I've known one of them for a while now. It's been a huge supporter of my channel for a long time, and so developed a relationship that way. And these are good people. These are really good people. So what happened in the first week? Well, number one, I'm going to look at this from my perspective initially. Just as somebody who hasn't done any progressionary raiding for, wow, probably the best part of 4 odd years. 3-4 odd years. In actual fact, the last time I did progressionary raiding, as in raiding that was the relevant, you know, at its most relevant, i.e. Content which was still existing, content which hadn't expired. And I'm not talking about things like going into Siege of Orgrimmar Mythic 12 months down the line, because that to me is not relevant content. You know, after 12 months, people have geared up exponentially from the raids. They've probably pushed into well into Mythic and all that kind of stuff. If that is so the inclination of the guild. So it's content where you're not properly geared for it, where you're pushing through to try and clear it and all that kind of jazz. And so from that perspective, the last time I did any of that would be Dragon Soul, which, let's face it, is I think in a lot of people's view, I'm not speaking the voice of the people here, but I think the vast majority of people recognise Dragon Soul as possibly the weakest raid that Blizzard have done. And that's not a stab at Blizzard by any stretch of the imagination, because let's face it, if there's one thing that Blizzard get right, and they've did plenty wrong in Mists of Pandaria, but if there's one thing that Blizzard tend to, more often than not, get absolutely spot on, it's the raiding element. It really is the raiding element. And I just think Dragon Soul was a damp squib. It just didn't quite hit the mark. But Dragon Soul, I think it was Dragon Soul Heroic, was the last time that I did any sort of progressionary raiding. And I think because I only did it on a part-time basis as well, even when I came back I didn't do it full-time. I just did it part-time. So even then we were probably looking at, I knocked off four bosses on Heroic, because I was only coming back and doing a little bit here and there. So, yeah, it's been a long time, this. A long time. So I've had to suffer the indignity if I've wanted to get gear of looking for raid, which I've promised myself I'm just not going to do again. I mean, definitely as a how should I put it? As a regular occurrence. You know, I might have to do just the odd quickie here and there, because there might be a bit of gear that I could swap out, you know, in the interim, that will help with the raiding that we're doing right now. So I might have to just do the odd one, but from what I saw of LFR this week, it's an absolute walkover, isn't it? It is literally a pedestrian walkover. I was absolutely amazed. So let's just push things forward now to Warlords of Draneor. Let's push things forward to Highmall and how we're getting on with the progression. Well, first week definitely had some ring rust. Definitely put on a personal level. Still talking on a personal level here. Before I get to the whole guild, you know, I'm just kind of being a bit selfish and being all a little bit me right now. But on a personal level, I definitely felt as if there was some ring rust that I needed to shift. A little bit of that ring rust, I think, was an occurrence of excitement as well, because I had never had the urge in many a year to do any sort of progression in raiding. Suddenly to get the urge, to get the itch, by what I'd seen in Warlords of Draneor, in the beta on the raiding section there, and also what I'd seen in Warlords of Draneor anyway, which actually turned me on to the expansion, and that was the big thing. I thought that you know, the vast majority of the content was good. It was engaging. It was fun. It sort of made me want to become more of a part of Warlords of Draneor and not do what I'd done in Mists of Pandaria, which is like the, you know, poor content, and I was going to exclude raiding from myself. So on that angle, there was the excitement of actually getting back into the raid, which was something quite big to me. So yes, a little bit of ring rust. Don't be fooled by the damage meters down the bottom. On this fight, Korath, or Korah, he has a nullification barrier. He has a huge nullification barrier, which means, as you can see, when we're doing damage, it's just going to absorb. So it looks like we're not doing any damage, but we are. We're just burning down a shield. That's all. So don't take it as oh my god, his DPS has gone to shit. No, it's nothing like that at all. It's all a matter of absorbing the damage that we're doing. So there was a little bit of ring rust, but I still performed very well on some fights. It was good to know, at the very least, I was competitive with my raiders, not being as geared as quite a few of them, but in the same instance, because I think I've played Destro for so long now, it's kind of come a little bit of second nature. So although there might be specs that do a wee bit more damage out there, I kind of tend to perform reasonably well with Destro. That said, well, no, I can't talk about next week. We'll talk about next week in next week's raid progression. So I'm not going to talk about what I was going to say then. But you'll have to wait till next week to find out what I was going to talk about. But at least I was very competitive. Kind of tended to, in most fights, end 4th to 6th. Something like that. That was sort of like the Nestle. Some fights, I think a couple of fights ended, maybe one or fight ended up a 2nd. And stuff like that, and then this fight is like quite down below for Warlocks because we're simply attacking the barrier. So it's just absorbing all the damage up. But I was happy. I was pretty happy with my performance. I was pretty happy with how things went. It was a little bit weird because as I was talking about the excitement elements of it, I was doing a lot of the fighting with a bit of a huge grin on my face. It's like this massive grin on my face, thinking, oh my god, this is so cool. And there's a very kind of schoolboy element to it, which I actually found quite endearing, to be perfectly honest with you. And it just proves something as well. It just proves something that if you're in the right environment with the right people, then raiding and all this kind of stuff can be bloody good fun. Really could be good fun. So how did we actually do as a guild? Well, this is on normal difficulty that you're seeing things right now. We're running with 20 raiders. We knocked off the first boss on heroic. So we knocked off Kargath on heroic, which, to be perfectly honest with you, virtually anyone can do. It's not that difficult a fight to do on heroic. Not too much different from normal. And then we switched things to normal and we knocked off Kargath. and then we knocked off the Butcher, and we knocked off Tectus, and Brackenspore, and a Twin Ogron, and this is number 6. Korra is number 6. So this is 6 out of 7 bosses. And we do actually manage to knock this one off as well. Now, this is a very messy kill. You notice that a couple of people died, and then we get the orb coming in, and it's causing all manner of trouble. So it looks like this is actually going to turn into a wipe. And I've got to confess, we thought it was on what? We thought this was going to be a wipe. So this was the opportunity now. We just had to burn the boss. Burn the boss. Forget the ads. And just focus on this. Can we get it down before the nullification barrier comes back up? Before that thing that comes back up where all the damage that we do simply immunes. We get into 200k and the barrier comes back up. But there are additional dots which are already on, which seem to already tick through the nullification barrier. Seem to completely tick through it, and he dropped dead, which was awfully good of him. So this week's progression, in the very first week, we managed to knock off 6 out of 7 bosses on normal. We knocked off 1 boss on heroic as well. So that puts us in a good stead, because that means we should be able now to farm the first 6 bosses at least, plus the first boss of heroic, which is going to enable the guild to gear up, which is going to obviously allow the easier farm, which should allow better progression on the final boss of this expansion. So will we actually, of this expansion, of this raid, so will we knock it off next week? You're going to have to tune into next week's raid progression to find out. So I hope you enjoyed this little insight into my raiding, and I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Those links are in the description down below, and I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care, everybody. Bye-bye.